start out this video by setting you up here and giving you a sort of a bird's eye view. I don't have the best tripod because I'm actually doing this on my phone, and to be truthfully honest with you, you're sitting on a manure pile. So hopefully everything stays where it's supposed to stay. I did build myself this nice little step because honestly I was a little bit too lazy to run to the barn and grab a step ladder. So I just figured, well, I got a few extra pieces and I'm just gonna make myself a step. I am trying to attach a helper board, if you will, to the corners of this shed. This shed was given to us probably a few years back, 7 or 8 years back, and it's in need of some repair. It's had a lot of things coming and going in and out of it in the past couple years, and well, she's seen days, that's for sure. So there, if you note, there's a little 4x4 up there in the corner, and boy, I'll tell you what, that doesn't hold this sucker very together. So I am putting a treated 2x6 up there. Most of everything that I'm going to be working with today is treated 2x6. And the reason that I'm putting it in the inside is because I'm trying to shore up the corners. This three-sided shed is actually skiddable. So you can move it here and there, which is why we like it so much, is because we can just, you know, skinny it this way and skinny it that way, and away we go. In the future, I do believe that I'm going to be putting like a ridge in, or a footer in the front so that it's a little bit easier to hold these sides together. But as you can see, it can hold me up, so it's sturdy enough. The next thing that I'm going to do is deassemble my steps so that I can and find a screw that I dropped, so that I can move on with the project. The stuff you see in front of me currently is things that I've done a little bit of patching on in the year prior. We had calves in this three-sided shed the year prior, so I just basically wanted to make it so they couldn't fall through the tin, because like I said, this old shed, man, she's seen some better days. So I was doing that a bit more on the fly. There were actually calves that were living in this shed or using this shed as a shelter when I put in the braces on the inside, and the pack in the inside was actually fairly high. So I'm just going to leave well enough alone and kind of leave that structure there and move on with the process. Just kind of making sure that we're making it available for whomever is going to live in it. This winter it will be Big Profit Man, the bull, and maybe a couple steers. So I want to make sure that Big Profit Man can't walk through the back end of this shed or the side of it or anything like that. Because I tell you what, when the girls get into heat, he wants to do his job, which I appreciate. However, I don't appreciate him walking through the back end of a three-sided shed to try to do his job. So we are going to make sure that we put some bumper plank up so that not only is it a physical barrier, but it's also a visual barrier. It doesn't look like he can just meander his big old butt through there. And when I say big, I mean big. Profit Maker is not a small guy at all. He is worth his weight in gold, though, because his babies, I tell you what, are turning out to be some lookers. Hindsight is truly 2020 in this video, as I am unable to flip this image in a way that's going to work. I had my phone setting up, like I said, on a manure pile because I don't have a tripod for my phone. I do have a tripod for my GoPro, but I haven't used my GoPro in quite a while to video anything because, well, GoPro does not do well in the cold, and honestly, that seems to be about the only time that I get a chance to make a video, except for today. And then I fuggled it up with not turning the phone sideways so it could get a decent view. So I apologize for the view that you guys have. It's a little bit taller and thinner than I'd like it to be, but you know, you go with the flow. You might also be wondering, what the heck is a Profit Maker? A Profit Maker is the name of our Red Angus bull, and he is pushing that 2,500 pounds with a vengeance. Like I said, he's not a mean guy, but he's a big guy. So we've got to make sure that the infrastructure that we're going to have him in helps him be, well, in where we want him to go. I'll turn the camera because I'm going to be working a lot more in the corner there. And basically what I'm doing is putting on a few pieces of board to pop out my bumper plank a little bit off the wall. I don't want the bumper plank to be tight on the wall because I do really want it to be more of a physical barrier than anything else. Now that I got you situated, sort of, again, like I said, and not the right quite view that I was hoping, but situated nonetheless, I'm going to go and measure up where I need to put on that next little chunk of board. I am measuring only because I want it to be somewhat similar to itself. This situation doesn't really come with blueprints or whatever. Honestly, I'm just sort of pulling it right out of my head and just going with the flow, which is a little bit more of what we do here on the farm. It might be a little bit more hodgepodge, but boy, she's definitely going to work. When I get my measurement, and I went about 28 inches off of the lower board, and like I said, I'm just propping this little chunk of board up so that I can screw the longer board onto something that's stable. And then I'll go back through or whatever and put in braces off of these, I would say that they're framing boards on the back, just to give it some more rigidity so that, like I said, our big boy or whomever we decide to put in this shed can't really bend it, and it's not going to have a lot of flex for them to think, oh, hey, well, if I push just a little bit harder, I might be able to go this way. Seeing as how I am trying to make it as sturdy as possible, I like to get my measurements, you know, sort of similar to what accurate might be. The unfortunate part is as I'm measuring this here board, I come to the conclusion that, well, I don't have the right length of board. But I do know that the back wall and the side walls are two different lengths. So like any good person with a tape measure, I'm going to measure it again to make sure that I do indeed need to get a different board for this application in the back. But because my side walls are shorter than my back wall, I think that this board is going to fit in along the side, which after my measurement, I have deduced that yes, it will indeed fit. It will need to be cut down a little bit, but I need some more blocks for more braces anyway, so I'm not really upset about that cut. I am dyslexic, so reading a tape measure actually really does suck for me. It's measure 3 or 4 times and try to cut once, and hopefully they all add up to be what they needed to be in the beginning. After a measurement, I am actually going to flip this board. People might think that that's a little strange, but I am a little strange. I tend to be just a little bit particular in how I cut things, mostly because the saw that we have has a massive battery on it, and it seems to me that my right hand works better for sawing than my left hand. It might be because that my right hand is a little bit stronger than my left hand. It's also going to be at this point in time that I say, hey guys, please use your safety equipment. I am not using my safety equipment. Do not follow my procedures and protocols. Please use your PPE. It probably will save your eyeballs from some things. I am grabbing up these blocks to go put them in their place that they need to live. And yes, I do have a funny way of holding my screws, which I have been told several times. However, I was a farrier in a past life. A farrier is a horseshoer, and a lot of horseshoers hold their nails in their mouth so that they're easily accessible when you're trying to put a shoe on a horse. Now that I've adhered the front block to the front of the shed, I am going to go to the back, and I'm going to go down to the back corner, and there is a little bit of a hiccup there. So the big 6x6 that makes up the corner of that shed also has a big piece of metal attached to it. The piece of metal is more for structural support. It goes straight down that 6x6 and then L's down to connect it to the skid that makes up that sidewall. It makes it a little bit more difficult to try to figure out how and where to place this block to make it so that everything can sit together. There's a lot of space that I was previously using to screw these blocks to that I don't have access to any longer. But where there's a will, there's a way, and we're going to pick up this board and we're going to test fit the thing to see exactly where I have clearance or ability to attach that block to get it to stay where I want it to stay. And then once we get that figured out, it should be smooth sailing. I know that this video is probably not going to go viral by any means, but there are a lot of things here that we do on the farm that I have not ever recorded, mostly because I only have two hands and most of the time I'm trying to use those. So, like I said, you're sitting on a pile of manure and my phone's not placed exactly right and all the things are, you know, this and that, but we're going to make it work. We're going to get it done, and hopefully you guys will hang around and watch the video. I'm going to play you some music so that you can kind of settle in with a bag of popcorn or whatever it is that you want to do. And I can continue working. So hang out with the tunes and let's go. I need another board. A good portion of this project is fairly repetitive work, which isn't really a bad thing to have, repetitive work, but it does still keep your mind going, trying to cut these boards to fit, and then blocks on the boards in the back, the framing boards, to make the situation a bit more sturdy. Um, in the grand scheme of things, this is not really, like I said, a project that comes with schematics by any means, but I do try to make sure that things are a bit level. That board in the back is not very level, so I'm eventually going to fix that. And then if I think about it, I'm trying to look at the situation as a perspective of an animal that is there in that building, but maybe wants to go out of that building. What are the weak points? Where are the issues? For them to be pushing on things. Also, the size of the animal is a little bit more important to get your bumper plank set where it needs to be. So the back end of this building is where a lot of the pressure is going to be put, I believe. It has in the past been a little bit pushed on, so things aren't as sturdy as they once were. We've had, like I said, a lot of things kind of coming and going out of there, and it works for a pretty decent wintertime home. We do live in Minnesota, so that it is, I feel, essential and necessary to have a shelter for the critters to get out of the weather. Seeing as how we do get some pretty inclement weather. There are probably a lot of people that don't think that it's necessary for cattle to have a shelter to get out of the weather, but I believe that animal husbandry, the basics of animal husbandry is, food, water, and shelter. I kind of really do stress that factor that they should be able to at least get out of the weather, especially if it's going to be inclement weather and anything like the state of Minnesota could be, which can be brutal. So in this next step, I'm basically figuring out which framing boards I want to mount these blocks to. And I basically just want to make it sturdy. I want to make it to where when I push on it, there's not any flexion. And then when something bigger pushes on it, there's going to be a lot less flexion than there could be. If you're wondering what length of screws I'm using about a 3.5-inch screw. They're actually leftovers from a project that we did, and well, we keep a lot of leftovers. That's one of the reasons why I have so many scrap pieces of board that I can work with today, is because there's a little bit of leftover stuff. So they are 3-inch Star T25 screws. I actually do prefer the T25 Star over things like Phillips because they don't strip out so easy. If mud or muck or poo gets jammed in them, you can clean them out fairly well, and the bit will still seat decently in them. And then, like I said before, we're using green treat 2x6 for this. I don't really feel like it's going to be an issue for the green treat because, for the most part, the critters that I'm going to put in here aren't going to gnaw on wood. If I was going to put, say, like donkeys or something in here, I wouldn't use green treat. But I would do something to keep them off of the bumper plank as a whole. So something like adding a cattle panel or a hog panel so that they can't grab a hold of the chunk of wood. Donkeys are notorious for being almost like woodchucks. Cattle are a little bit different. I'm finding that goats are a little bit woodchuck-esque as well. So a lot of the times when we have an issue to where we think something's going to chew on an edge, a lot like what we have on our big cow feed bunk, we have a piece of metal that we have bent over the top and made it fit very, very tight so that it's basically more of a deterrent than anything. They can still gnaw on it if they want to, but they really don't like the texture of the metal, so they do stay away from it. But if I were to put, like, say, donkeys in here, I would probably be putting like a cattle panel on the back of it, and I probably would not be using green treat. However, I would paint it with some sort of like a hot pepper sort of substance, just to emphasize the fact that I really don't want you to be chewing on it. I do think that there's going to be a fair bit of rubbing happening on these 2x6s, but green treat on hair isn't going to really do anything. They're basically just going to rub on them and, maybe shut out a little bit of a coat or whatever. Nothing serious. It's not going to be like, oh, well, it's going to soak into their skin and soak into their system and things like that. Also, they are going to be in this in the wintertime, and the wintertime in Minnesota is cold. Things are froze. I'm not worried about them being allowed to be in a warm area with this stuff. It's going to be cold, dude. It's going to be like, I don't know, like last year we had minus 42 degrees Fahrenheit. So, yeah, it can be cold. The next step is just basically, I'm actually going to take these scrap 2x6 pieces and I'm going to lay them on the actual framing boards themselves. I'm not going to put a block in these ones. I'm just basically, this is basically just see you can't fit type of thing. Like I said, Big Profit Man is a big dude, so I'm just basically deterring what would be his head size to fit in between these boards. So it's that one's more of a visual than an actual bumper plank, so to speak. And because I have this little piece that I have left over from cutting off one of the bigger pieces, I'm just gonna kind of chunk him on in there. And then I will have to be grabbing a second piece, but I do have one that's about the right size. It's about 70 inches is what I'm going to be looking for. And then I'm going to grab another scrap piece and kind of slave it onto each other. Like I said, this one is more of a visual than it is an actual functional, big time, don't push on me type of bumper board. Because my eyeballs don't have a measuring tape attached to them, I grab my handy dandy little tape and I'm going to measure out the distance on where I want it. I don't really want this one to go all the way to the end because, like I said before, it's more of a visual barrier so that he can't stick his head somewhere that his head shouldn't go. Boys will be boys, bulls will be bulls, and they like to destroy some things. So honestly, it's one of those things where you're just trying to kind of make it work. So again, measure twice, cut once, or try to do that at least. And I'm just basically trying to figure out where level is, because I come back, from getting this board, and that back plank did not look straight. So we're going to do some relining, which means that it's going to take a hot second. After I've gotten all of the brace screws out, I can grab my handy dandy tape measure and I can do a little bit of realigning. I am very sure that this is probably not how you're supposed to be using a drill, but that's what I got on hand. So I'm just going to do a little tap, 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 and try to get this sucker to skinny down to where my measurement is technically at. I had mentioned previously in the video that I wanted these about 28 inches apart. And then I was going to fill in the gaps with a few extras like you see on the right side of the video there. So since I have it where I want it, now I get to put the screws for the bumpers back in, and away we go. And of course, like every good project, when you have a time constraint, the battery died on the drill, so I had to go get myself another battery. Thankfully, I have two of them, so it's just kind of interchanging. And I'm going to pretty much be happy with what I got for level here. Like I said, it's a shed, so really the only one that cares about it is me, the bull. He doesn't care. I am going to try to straighten that board in the back just a little bit because she's just a little cattywampus. So I like to use what I have to add some sturdiness to where I think it should be. And this is it. So we push those screws back in with this power drill and away we go. Check for sturdy and it doesn't move. So I am happy with that. Next step is trying to piece together these two boards that I plan to have on the back. So doing some measurements, trying to get her figured out. Usually when I'm measuring, my brain is kind of going as I'm measuring, trying to draw a picture in my head as to what I plan to do with the situation. And seeing as how I have this lovely board who is about 70 inches long, I'm going to be satisfied with where that's going to be, probably without it being cut. So even though I don't plan on cutting this last board in the back, I do have to have something to tie the pieces together with. What I'm going to come up with is a chunk of board that I'm going to screw to the 70-inch board and the other board, the shorter board in the back there. And I'm going to tie them together with some screws. And this gap is going to sit not flush with everything, but like I said, I don't think the bull's going to care. And it's going to serve the purpose that I want it to do. If there were no tin on the back, I would adhere this patch, so to speak, on the other side, but I don't know. I don't have the ability, well, the time to be taking the tin off the back wall to make this nice and pretty and flush and all the things. I don't think that I'm a carpenter, but I try to definitely be the jack of all trades and the master of none, because it is definitely better than being a master of one. So a little bit of this and a little bit of that, then before you know it, kablooey, you got yourself some stuff stuck together with some screws. I don't know, I think that in the grand scheme of things, it's a good working system, and it'll figure out this problem just fine. So I'm just going to put some screws in this one piece, and then I'm going to place him on the other board, and away we go. adding a few more screws, and that pretty much buttons up the project that I have available time for today. There are a few more things that I probably should get done on it, but those are also things that I can get done once the calves are weaned and I have a little bit more time. Like I said, it's an evening time project, and sometimes you run out of time in the evening, especially in the fall seasons when the sun goes down a little sooner than what you're used to in the middle of the summer. Like I said, a couple more screws and away we go, and before you know it, we'll be done. So, basically, thanks for hanging out. I am thinking that the bull is going to be just fine in here. Making sure that, sorry, Quinny's looking at me. Making sure that he is not going to be able to push through the tin. He's not a bad guy. He's just a big dude. And so, with big dudes, you know, he forgets how big he is. But basically, let's walk you around and kind of walk you through what I did. So this right here was a last year's cobble job. So, but it held up with the heifers, and so I'll leave it. This right here is basically just a bumper plank. It's to keep them off the tin. This is like a second-hand three-sided shed. We got it from a guy who built it many, many years ago, and it stood vacant for a long time. So, yeah. He also decided that he needed to build the back wall with a 1x4, which doesn't stand up to much around here. So this guy right here is just a bumper plank to keep them off of the tin, and then these ones sit out a little bit further. I'm not really concerned about them getting their legs behind there because, to be truthfully honest with you, they usually lay in the middle anyway. So if we do put calves or whatever in here, it'll be a little bit more secure. I did have to replace this guy, and I'm going to put a block up here on the top corner so that it doesn't want to when somebody pushes on it, but for the most part, here you go. There's another set of bumper planks here, and then I need to reattach the tin on the bottom side, so I'll probably put something in between here like that, finish it out a little bit more. But this video is getting long enough. I also re-braced the top there in the first part of the video. That's what you see me do. But yeah, thanks for hanging out, guys, and say hi. She says, "What are you doing?" I'm gonna come up and see what you're doing. Look at them, curious little devils they are. But yeah. What's up, short stack? Yeah. What do you think, Celeste? She says, yeah, it passes inspection. Now go away so that I can play in it. But I need to push pause on today's progress because I need to go make supper, and I'm pretty sure that everybody's getting darn hungry in the house. So I'll finish those up. This project's up after the girls go to bed, and we got chores done, so I don't have friends visiting me in the three-sided shed. Alrighty. We'll check you later, guys. Have a great day, and thanks for hanging out.